What's going on, everybody? I'm here to kind of provide my review of Unguarded by Scottie Pippen, co-written by Michael Arkush. Yeah, I mean, pretty much that's basically it. So basically, I thought the book was really good. From start to finish, he kind of really got into a lot of the heart of all the type of politics he had to deal with, from high school to college, all the way to the NBA, to the professional league, right? Myself being a Lakers fan, LeBron James, right, being that kind of the best player in the league, if not now, you're right, for the past decade. That point forward position, some have argued or asserted that was invented by Scottie Pippen, right? So, kind of reading about how he learned, the different kind of dynamics of basketball, and from learning how that he had to kind of adjust to the game. Actually, I was originally a football player. I like that personally. But obviously these were types of things that really that I really resonated with. Because obviously, for us, in the corporate world, right, we have different passions and pursuits. Some of us are former athletes, so I mean, that's something that But I think more importantly, that is it's lessons learned being from a team level. Let's kind of really get into the book. So Scottie talks about, he starts off, he was a kid growing up in Hammer, Arkansas. He basically was originally a football player. He loved football. And then his junior year, his coach came up to him and said, "Scottie, when you're to stop playing around, being a game manager, start playing basketball." Because he was basically an equipment manager for the basketball team as high school. Where he lived, rural Arkansas, very small town. He grew up very poor. He had a bunch of siblings. They lived in a very small house. His father basically was paralyzed by a stroke around his 8th grade. So his mom was basically, left to kind of care for the siblings, Scottie and his older brothers. And so his brother also ended up being disabled because he got pushed in the back from a bully. I think around the 8th grade. And so and then his spine down, he was paralyzed. So Scottie basically talked a lot about all that, and how that shaped him. So basically, it shaped him because it helped motivate him to kind of really push himself. So when he basically had gotten to basketball, he wasn't as kind of focused as he was with football. So the coach made him run up and down the bleachers every single day after practice, and he would just get so exhausted because the South during summertime, summertime, even fall, when athletes have to go, I mean, the humidity kind of really just set in. So for him, with his conditioning, the humidity helped help build that stamina. Well, that toughness, but also kind of taught him not to quit, right? Because that would basically be a mantra he would take in the NBA. And then when he finally, got done with high school, he was at risk of also not finishing. He was able to finish, and he had trouble being noticed. He actually had trouble getting on the radar of a lot of top colleges, such as University of Arkansas, or like many others like Duke. So he ended up being a walk-on athlete. And for me, being a JUCO athlete, that resonated with me because, I was not recruited by anyone. I obviously didn't get to go as far as as an NFL player or anyone who played D1 or whatever, right? But I mean, I did have enjoy kind of a nice semi-pro thing going on. But Scottie, obviously, when he talked about it, I just thought it was really cool because it really helped kind of paint the picture, kind of what he had to kind of go through to get to that level, the next level, right? And kind of let's get into kind of some of the criticisms of the book that have been kind of quoted by many other NBA players and many others, kind of who really kind of just taken shots at Scottie, right? So, for example, Charles Barkley, Michael Jordan, and a bunch of others. Well, mainly criticism is about how Scottie comes after Michael Jordan, because Scottie Pippen, a lot of the critique in the prologue of the book, he basically talks about how he's portrayed in the kind of hit documentary The Last Dance. If you haven't watched that, it's on Netflix. It's basically about the Chicago Bulls' last championship run from 97-98. So Scottie basically goes in and starts off the prologue saying that, The Last Dance was about, Michael Jordan. He was very condescending to how he portrayed him, not only Scottie, but his other teammates. Because Scottie felt that, the team helped contribute to Jordan's success. And a lot of The Last Dance was just kind of a self-over-glorification of Jordan instead of glorifying the entire team. And, depending on who you are, you could agree or disagree with that, right? But, I mean, I think his point is, it stands true to us in the corporate world, because I'm sure many of us have felt that for whatever reason, our contributions have been overshadowed or haven't received the proper recognition that they should have to help us get to that next phase in our career, right? For Scottie, obviously, that next phase was kind of being recognized as like the championship kind of, superstar player. which he wasn't really able to achieve, with Michael Jordan, because he had to play in Jordan's shadow, right? So, and I think that one of the things he really emphasized was that it's not necessarily, the sport of basketball isn't necessarily about just one player, and it's not necessarily about just kind of one superstar, right? Even though we do glorify many of our idols, such as LeBron James, Michael Jordan, to say, these are like the best players in the NBA, and these are like in the NFL too. These are like some of the greatest, athletes we've ever seen, which they are, right? But ultimately, his assertion is that team sports, you have to give credit to the team, right? And any leader in any organization, right, in our line of work, in my line of work at least, right, you need a good team to kind of build, good software. For myself as a servant leader, that resonated with me because the team is the reason why I've been able to achieve a lot of the success and milestones I've had with many of the high delivery impact initiatives I've helped drive throughout my career. Now we get to his college career. He's basically trying to get noticed on the NBA. He's just going through the motions of a walk-on athlete, earning a scholarship. He ends up earning the scholarship his junior year, and he ends up becoming the best player on the team. But one thing he would emphasize is that even though he's the best player on the team, that didn't mean he wasn't subject to the same treatment as everyone else. Meaning, he would still have to go through the same motions as teammates. He still have to do the suicide drills, which I hated. He's not the. I mean, obviously he played at 4 year. I didn't play 4 year, but he had to go through all these different types of workouts and routines, to where it would break your will, right? You basically get a point where your will's broken, right? And he just basically took it on the chin and just ran with it, and he ended up setting the model example for his team, and eventually that helped carry him to the NBA. Now, when he gets to the NBA, he's also encountering the same struggles in college in terms of getting noticed. But eventually he did get noticed by Jerry Krause, who ended up being his general manager for the Bulls. And Jerry Krause was trying to lock him up or try to help kind of limit the exposure he would get from our teams. But Scottie was able to kind of continue playing, in like post senior tournaments and different games, so that way other teams could notice him, so he could really market himself as a player, right? And essentially that was kind of, I thought that's something that I feel that some of us also feel that, for example, we go through interviews and maybe we get offers, right? Like, here, sign on dotted line. But we have other interviews. We have other offers lined up. We have other kind of things we want to entertain, options, right? So we're not going to necessarily just commit. No, we're going to want to see what the market really has to offer. So Scottie basically did that, and he ended up signing for $5 million for 4 or 5 years. I've got the exact time. So back to where, back to the beginning where he was raised, it would help his family. It basically helped him buy a house for his parents, help out his disabled brother, and that's pretty awesome, Then when he gets to the NBA, he notices that, the talent pool is so much more saturated in terms of talent, right? Meaning that he was the best player in college and the best player from his high school. But then the NBA, the talent pool becomes, you're basically competing against the best of the best of the best at their respective colleges and universities. So he had to figure out kind of what he could use to market himself, right? And that relates to us because if you see, right, we have to find what our skills are that we can market, and whatever we're really passionate about, and just basically pursue that full force and make sure that, whatever we're doing, we're not staying behind the 8 ball in terms of relevance, right? So Scottie basically did that. He basically found out he's not a scorer like Michael Jordan. He's not an offensive threat. So what he would do would basically focus on defense. He said, and I agree with him, that where Michael Jordan would be the god of the offense, Scottie would be that of the defense. He could help drive the defensive will of the team. And that basically showed because, when the Bulls ended up kind of going on the dynasty around the 90s, he was the best defender of his era. Basically be able to defend Matt Johnson finals and defend other players, right? But he was also realistic in his perspective in terms of understanding that the level of competition he played, it could have been a lot more difficult had he played Michael Magic Johnson in the 80s when the Showtime Lakers were at their peak, right? But essentially, still being able to do what he did, it doesn't take away from his own greatness. So back to Scottie, right? Now, obviously, he's in the NBA, and now the Bulls are trying to get over the hump. They're trying to, get past Detroit, and they have to figure out kind of how do we overcome this obstacle, and what do we all have to deal with either in project management and agile development, right? Roadblocks, right? How do we overcome roadblocks, right? So Scottie basically, figured out you have to be more physical, and they understood that the kind of style and the philosophy that their coach would implement at that time, and their coach before the 89-90 season, it was Doug Collins, right? His philosophy is focused on Michael Jordan. Basically, everyone get out of the way and let Michael score, right? So what they had to do was basically find out, okay, this philosophy that we're trying to employ, it's not working, right? So what they have to do, they basically had to, figure out what would work better to help the team get involved. And what they found was that when after the '89 season, they said Jerry Krause had to fire Doug, and he went with Phil Jackson. And Phil Jackson basically implemented the triangle offense, which was kind of being proposed by the assistant coach Tex Winter at the time as kind of the go-to offense for the team. Because essentially with the triangle offense, it was less focused on just Michael Jordan scoring, but also seeing how the team can be, an offensive threat and make Michael be more dangerous off the ball, because teams respected Michael's offensive scoring ability enough to, even when he didn't have the ball, they have to still chase after him, and that would leave other guys open. And it helped Michael become less of just a scorer, but also a facilitator, right? Passing to his teammates, helping them score. What do we do in project management? We facilitate. So again, a lot of parallels in life, in our lives, at the regular level. And he also kind of talked about kind of the issues that he faced, with teammates being traded, and essentially, the contract situation where in his third year he wanted to basically get, a really good extension, but he also had to consider his family back in Arkansas, right? So he basically ended up signing a front-loaded deal, which was below market, for a player who he'd end up becoming, at that time, a premier all-star. Starting a small forward for a championship dynasty team. And with that, he signed the dotted line, and essentially he set himself up. And I mean, he set his family up pretty nicely. But then for 6 years, he was the sixth highest paid player on the team, from '91 to '97, and I guess '98 actually carried over to that final season of the Bulls, the Last Dance, which is the documentary on Netflix. You guys can watch it if you want, if you haven't seen it already. But basically, with that, I mean, he was the second best player on the team, but it's the sixth highest paid player. I mean, it's crazy, it's insane, right? So, obviously, kind of being able to kind of work through that and being able to still be a confident professional and still coming to work with the right attitude was something that he had to really do on a day in, day out basis, both before the championship runs in the '90s and during, and then after. And obviously, after his championships, the championship window of the Bulls closed in '98. By the time he left '99, he was able to sign a $65 million deal for 5 years. It's pretty nice, right? Not bad. So he ended up getting his money after all. But I think it was really cool to kind of hear about that, because obviously, some of us, may feel, hey, we're not getting our market value at the organization, but we got to sign the dotted line and just, clench our teeth, because that's what's on the table, right? So I really think a lot of it was a lot of the criticism at Scottie was taken out of context. Because number one, his criticism of Michael Jordan isn't unfounded, right? The Last Dance did kind of criticize, really focus on Jordan more than just Scottie's teammates. For example, when Jordan passed the ball to Steve Kerr, who's the coach of the Warriors, to make the final shot, or in Game 5 of the '97 Finals, Scottie was the one who facilitated that play. He basically tipped the ball. Michael got it, and then Michael passed it to Kerr, and they didn't even mention Scottie's ability to steal the ball and tip it from Karl Malone. Secondly, a lot of the documentary of Last Dance left out a lot of Scottie's other contributions. For example, he basically said the mailman doesn't deliver on Sundays to Karl Malone in the '97 Finals, and Karl missed both free throws. The Bulls, I think, won Game 1, of the '97 Finals for the fifth championship. And then essentially, also he talked in his '94 season. They basically, they portrayed him. Michael basically talked about. From '94 season to '97, he basically showed Scottie as almost being like a selfish player, team player, and a quitter. Depending on who you are, I'm not going to have that debate. But I think those are things that, really kind of, I mean, the way that it was portrayed, I thought, they could have done a better job, kind of showing it from Scottie's side. And, at the end of the day, I mean, he did end up finishing third in MVP voting in '94. He did end up winning 6 rings. Even though he had surgery in '98, he still ended up coming back on January, and he ended up being a starting, contributor for the Bulls' last championship, and he ended up being the greatest small forward of his era in the '90s, right? The best small forward in the '90s. So, I think ultimately, he's unheralded, right? He's an unheralded great player, and the book that he wrote is just basically him kind of giving his perspective, and also being able to tie it, to us here at the ground level, because, I think I posted about it, when I posted about the book, I think a week and a half ago. I mean, a lot of us, we contribute so much, but most of the visibility is going to be on the CEO of organization, right? Unless we're ambassadors for the organization, we can't really speak on the organization's behalf, right? And even if we are ambassadors, we're still not the decision makers, at the top. And essentially, I think that's really what I took away from the book. It's not necessarily a hit job on Michael Jordan or any of his teammates or his coaches. It's really just an appreciation and a retrospect of his career. I mean, if we think about this, and if I put these numbers out there, Scottie was the only player to have 5 assists. I think it was 5 steals and 5 blocks in the game, in 2 playoff games. The only guard to do that in 2 or 3 playoff games. And he was the only only forward, non-guard, to average 200 steals in 3 seasons in a season. He did it for 3 seasons. And he also made the playoffs 16 years straight. So that means 11 years with the Bulls, 1 year with Houston, and then 4 straight years with Portland. That's incredible. Like LeBron James gets a lot of credit for making the finals 10 years straight. I think we're 9 years straight. I forgot. But essentially, or 9 out of 10 years, but he made it 13 years straight. So Scottie still even broke LeBron's record. Or Scottie's record is a little bit better than LeBron's record in terms of just being consistent, making playoffs every single year. So, these are things I really took away. The ability of being able to kind of figure out what you're good at, marking your skills, and not basically. I think one thing I really loved about the book, he didn't talk about his teammates as supporting cast, members, right? And I think a lot of us view even the corporate world, we're like, oh yeah, we're a team, we're supporting cast, but we basically are all individual contributors, and all of our contributions really come in and tie in to the overall success, and we're all trying to reach a common objective. And I think Scottie really embodied that. He really embodied the key team leader. I really embodied kind of, because in the book he never calls his teammates supporting cast. He makes it clear, like, we're a cast, So, a lot of that, I mean, obviously the media, they portray a narrative of the superstar player getting all the credit, depending on which organization you're at, CEO gets all the credit, which is fine, I mean, that's how it is. But I do agree, we all of our contributions matter. We're all great at different things, I mean, not everyone can do what someone else can, right? I mean, and I think sometimes, the most brilliant people may or may not be, the quote unquote most successful, depending on who you are, right? So, I think ultimately, I really enjoyed Unguarded for a lot of the reasons, that people, may also enjoy it. I don't believe, I think a lot of the backlash coming from fans and peers, it's pretty much unfounded, because many of them, like Charles Barkley was on a podcast the other day. He said he hasn't even read the book, he's read excerpts. Many of the excerpts were taken out of context, right? So I would say, if you have nothing to do this holiday, definitely, grab a copy of the book. If you care about, if you're a fan of basketball, you're a fan of the Bulls, you're just a fan of just life lessons that, we can get from athletes, professional athletes, even though they're not, we're way far apart from professional athletes in our line of work. There's a lot of things, a lot of parallels that I also will draw from his experiences. So yeah, definitely, I would recommend getting Unguarded, and, I hope you guys enjoy his little book review, and have a happy holidays, celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year. Take care.